So it's been 1 month since I switched from the iPhone 14 Pro to the Google Pixel 7 Pro. And now that it's been a month, it's time to step away from the initial reactions, the initial specs, and talk about what it's actually like to use this phone on a day-to-day basis. So after using this for the past month, I found a lot of things that were very positive that I didn't expect, and some negatives, as well as some solutions to the negatives that I want to share with you in this video. So starting off with the first positive, this one, a little bit less of a specific thing, more of a blanket statement. Unlike the Pixel 6 Pro, which came out with a lot of software issues, this overall has been a really smooth experience. I was pleasantly surprised to see Google launch this with really no issues at all. There was 1 or 2 bugs that I kind of experienced, but I'll talk about those later in the video. For the most part, a fantastic launch from a software perspective. Getting to the first problem, however, this is that the battery on here was not as good as I was used to, coming from an iPhone 13 Pro before that, and there's a couple reasons for this. One of them, the battery itself wasn't really that great. Like, I could get through a day, but I felt like I was constantly getting the alerts for like turn on power saving mode. But the second thing is that I found this phone was so slippery that whenever I set it on wireless charging pads, it would just like fall off the charging pads if they weren't perfectly level. On top of that, I would always have to like plug it in because it didn't have MagSafe. Like, I love using my MagSafe charger in my car and on my desk. And so the combination of those two things, as well as, like I said, it is really slippery, so that was also a problem. It wasn't really nice to hold this phone. All 3 of those were fixed by getting a different phone case. So right here, I have one from Mouse, M-O-U-S, but there's other ones from like Peak Design, for example. I've been trying to get my hands on both of these for a really long time, but they've just been back ordered until now. So I finally got this case, which has MagSafe, which fixes all 3 of those problems. So the first one, the slippery design, like I said, this is obviously now much more grippable, so I never drop the phone. Second of all, it now has MagSafe, so I never feel like I have to charge it all the time, because when I'm sitting at my desk, it's charging. When I'm driving, it's charging. So that fixes the thing that I don't really like charging it by plugging it in. And on top of that, I don't have to worry about the battery dying all the time because it's always charging a little bit while it's on my desk. So that was a big solution there, getting this case in particular. Again, shout out to Mouse for making a great case. Again, Peak Designs also has a really great one. I'll link both of them in the description. And I'm sure once I have the Peak Design case, hopefully in the next week or so, I'll talk about that more on Twitter and Instagram. So if you want to know which case is better, go over and follow me, and I'll talk about that as soon as I have that other case in my hand. But regardless, that was a huge improvement to the experience with the Pixel 7 Pro. By the way, I realized that probably sounded like a pretty hard plug. This is not sponsored. I really just needed this case, and I was so happy to see that they came out with that. It is a little bit pricier though, so if you're looking for a cheaper option, they do have MagSafe stickers, or you can get like a D-brand sticker on the back and a MagSafe sticker, and that combination should give you better grip as well as MagSafe for maybe a little bit of a lower price. Okay, so that case was a big solution for this phone. Getting to another negative as well as a solution for that, the camera bar, I really like the design. I like the high gloss on here, but unlike the Pixel 7, which was matte and didn't really show scratches, the high gloss finish on the Pixel 7 Pro gets scratched so easily. After using this for just a month, you can see it's absolutely covered in scratches. So I highly recommend, as soon as you get this phone, go out there and buy a little camera bar protector. They have glass ones and plastic ones all over Amazon, and that should protect you from getting those scratches, unless you don't care about that, in which case, let's move on to the next point. Getting to the positives, this is of course a Pixel, and Pixel has some of the best software, in my opinion, for phone calls, right? This sounds like a weird thing to be really excited about, but when I try Samsung phones, iPhones, like every other phone out there, something I always miss and I always appreciate when I come back to Pixel phones is their suite of features for managing phone calls, whether that's call screening, which if you're getting a robocall or any other call out there and you don't know the number, it's just so nice to screen it so you don't end up answering so many fake phone calls. Additionally, Hold for Me is fantastic when you're calling, like I said, say the IRS, for example. If you're gonna be on hold for 30 minutes, who wants to sit there and listen to music from like some hold music when instead Google can hold for you and let you know when somebody's talking. And on top of that, Direct My Call has already saved me a ton of time. Whenever I'm calling something that has like 10 different options, and you have to press 1 for this, press 2 for that, it already knows the options and it tells me that, and I can speed through those no problem at all. So that is a massive, massive positive. I'm not gonna get into the other features. You guys already know a lot of the Pixel features, but I really like them. As like Now Playing, for example, you're at a baseball stadium, you wonder what the song is, it's already on your phone, it's on your lock screen. Great feature to have. Getting into a negative, back to the call screening thing, I really wish, and I don't know why Google doesn't do this, I really wish you could customize that. It just seems like such an easy thing to type out like exactly what you would rather it say instead of, hi, this is a Google robot. Like, people don't always know what that means. You could say, hi, this is Mike's phone. This is like an auto response, like say why you're calling, right? And that way, people that you do know that are calling would be more likely to just say what they're, instead of hanging up and being confused because they thought they called you when they got a Google robot. Customization, I don't know. Come on, Google. That seems like an easy one. Getting to a positive, this phone, I don't know how else to say it. It really just works well, and from an Android experience, it feels like the UI here is kind of the perfect balance of extremely smooth and simple and clean, yet also customizable and feature-packed if you look in the right places. So it feels like a perfect balance, in my opinion, that I could easily recommend to my older relatives or my tech friends or even my iPhone friends. Like, anybody out there who's used either an iPhone or an Android could come over to this UI and really have a great experience and not feel like they're missing anything or not feel like there's too much and it's clunky or anything like that. So props to Google for making a smooth, clean UI. It really does feel very similar to iOS in many regards. So I really like that. As far as those bugs I mentioned earlier on, there were really two that one of them has already been resolved. The other one I think is getting resolved. But the first one was that originally, like Google Assistant on here, you can press and hold the power button, it pops up, and it worked for me for a while. And then after the first week, it got weird where I had to press and hold the button, and then it would pop up and say, tap the microphone to start speaking. Now, that only lasted for about a week. That no longer is an issue. And I know other people had that as well. So I assume that bug has been resolved, but I figured I'd mention it anyway. The only other bug that I found was that some MVNOs, so for example, like Mint Mobile, I always cycle through a lot of different SIMs. I try all the different carriers, and I tried Mint with this for a little while with an eSIM because I was coming from the iPhone 14 Pro, and the eSIM on here wasn't really that compatible. So it said it was compatible, it worked, but every now and then when I would leave Wi-Fi, I would have no data. Like, it would say I had 5G, but then I wasn't able to do anything. I had to restart the phone like 5 or 6 times before finally it would connect, and then it had no issues. So maybe that's a Mint Mobile thing, maybe that's just a general MVNO thing, or maybe that's a Google Pixel software thing. Regardless of what it is, I'm sure that's going to be resolved hopefully very soon. Moral of the story, just don't use an eSIM with this phone unless you have a major carrier. Getting into a positive, this one goes without saying. The camera is really incredible for still photos. We've already known that. I love these photos. They're probably my favorite out of any phone out there, which is a preference thing for sure. But it also does a great job with videos. A little bit of a drawback, if you zoom way in, it can be a little bit jittery with how it tries to stabilize. So it's not like the best for zoomed in videos, but for any other videos, which most of my videos are not zoomed in, any other videos do a fantastic job. I like how they look. And most importantly, photos look amazing with any lens. The ability to zoom in up to like 30x on here and still have a decent-ish photo, that's really impressive. So anything between 0.6x and 10x, you're getting a fantastic photo out of that. And so, props to Google for making a solid camera system on here. And on top of that, this does translate over really well to Instagram and Snapchat. I think there's a common thought that a lot of photo apps out there, so Instagram, Snapchat, things like that, work better on iPhone than they do on Android. And while that was definitely true a couple years ago, at least for the Pixel right now, that seems to not really be the case. So Snapchat is integrated really well here. I can double tap the back of my phone to open Snapchat. That's a setting you can enable. And within Snapchat, you can switch between the lenses, so you can go to the ultra wide lens, the video, the photos, they all look pretty decent in my opinion. And so between an iPhone and a Pixel, I don't think you'll really see a massive difference from social media cameras. I don't think that's really a valid argument anymore between Android and iOS. The other negatives, as I mentioned before, videos can be a little bit jittery when you zoom way in. The eSIM wasn't really supported that well. Those are two negatives I had. Back to a positive though, the biometrics to sign in. Of course, optical fingerprint sensor is not number one, but it's not bad either. Like ultrasonic, like Samsung has, is definitely a little bit better. But after using this for a month, I don't really think I ever have an issue. It's really the edge cases where you might have an issue. If your hands are wet, if your hands are dirty, things like that would not work as well with this. But in most everyday situations, I can just tap on that. It signs in quickly, and I just don't have any issue with my location. It's accurate, it's consistent. I didn't have a problem with that. But for the maybe 10% of the time when I don't, like my hands are wet or something like that, the Face ID is also nice for unlocking. Of course, Face ID doesn't work for biometric unlocking things. So like like Google Pay, for example, and other things like that. It's not going to work for that, but Face ID does work to unlock your phone in general. So not the most secure thing out there, but it is a convenient secondary biometric to sign into your phone so you're not always typing your PIN in. The only other thing to mention about this phone is that it takes some getting used to a larger phone like this. As I mentioned, it's a really, really slippery phone, so you kind of have to get a case or a skin. Maybe a skin's a good idea, but if you get a case on here, obviously it's making it a little bit larger, and so it's a big phone, right? 6.7 inches, and then a case on top of that. It's a chunky phone. I do kind of wish Google made like a 6.1 inch Pro level phone that had the telephoto, but I think for anyone out there that is going to be a power user, that wants the better cameras, that wants the better display, the great refresh rate, this is a solid phone. And on top of that, I really love the boxy design of it for media viewing. It's just a lot better than most other phones out there that really chop off the corners. So it feels like a good experience. Between this and the Pixel 7 and the Pixel 6a, I've already made videos about this in the past, but in summary, this is the phone I'd recommend for anybody that can afford it and you really think you're going to be a power user. If you're considering dialing it back and you want to save some money, just go all the way down to the 6a. The 6a is still a fantastic phone, and I don't think it's really worth upgrading from the 6a to the 7 unless you're a power user and you can afford it, in which case, just go up to the 7 Pro. Those are the two that I would recommend, but leave a comment and let me know what you think about the Pixel 6a, 7, and 7 Pro. All great phones. You'll enjoy any one of them. And if you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing. I'm Mike O'Brien. I'll see you next time.